Hey everyone, this is Alex from Three Promise Labor Services, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing someone that's an industry professional throughout masonry and concrete work, and then also someone that's is becoming a really good friend of mine as well. So today I've got Corey Adams with me, and Corey is someone that not only owns his own masonry and contracting company, but he also is an advocate for others that are looking to get into the business or grow their business. So Corey, can you tell us a little bit about your company and what you guys are doing?
Well, we like you said, we are a concrete and masonry company. We are about a mix, residential and commercial now, with commercials actually taking it over this year, which we're excited about. So there's some growth there. And really, we're a small family-run company. That's what I wanted. We did the big thing for a while, working around and on the road and things, and decided to go back and start from scratch again. Everyone said I was crazy, but here we are. We're still kicking and screaming and making the dream work.
Which is awesome, and that's what it's all about, right? You do one thing, you figure it out, you learn a little bit, and then you continue from there. And how did you get started with what you did?
Well, I was very fortunate, actually. I grew up in an industry. My father is a concrete contractor, very respected concrete contractor, and I grew up in a complete family of entrepreneurs. So I really was blessed with the itch to be in the trades and that business savvy that you learn as a 12-year-old boy, sitting around listening to these business owners that are really kicking off and talking and making decisions, and it was right there at our dinner table. It was awesome. Yeah. So it just kind of brought me right into it, and I just loved it ever since.
Yeah, and this is actually going to lead into another question that I'm going to have later, but tell me about some of those conversations that you got to listen into, and especially, was it different hearing your father talk about it? Did you feel like you got to learn a little bit more? Or?
It was very collaborative in those days. I mean, we were, that was been in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when I was really started recalling those conversations. But it was so collaborative because so many of those guys that were in that group really were starting off or, at that jumping point to take the next step. So it was never really about my father teaching me specific things as much as it was this group of conversations that were all about, anything from labor disputes to contract negotiations to, you're reading blueprints. I was reading blueprints by 14 years old. I mean, that's one of the family functions we did because my dad was learning at the same time. It was so awesome to be there and kind of watch it. Not from an outside perspective, but more of just kind of a fly on the wall perspective.
Yeah, and were you out there laying block and doing all that at 14?
No, actually I started my first concrete pour I was 12.
12?
So
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy. Now we would not get away with any of that where I was at, but let's not name names.
That's okay. That's okay, but, and we won't name names on this.
But we've I was in it my whole life. I just started in it and I just loved it.
When did you go off on your own?
We went off on our own about 3.5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Actually, as I got out of college, I went back to work for my father for about 16 years. I was part owner of that company as well. And, as we got older, him and I to value our relationship, we decided I sold my portion of the company and took off, on my own because the relationship was more. I was young and ready to go, and he was older and wanted to slow down, and he's happy, I'm happy. We still call each other and talk and laugh about things. So
Absolutely.
we're still helping each other out.
Yeah, and I'm sure you are. And that's the good part about this industry too, is that I'm sure at that point you were ready to break out a little bit too, and you wanted to do your own thing potentially.
Yeah, I was more pushing growth. After I started really my self-education process in the business side of this thing, I really wanted to push growth. I could see the potential in the industry. And it just wasn't something that he wanted to be a part of because of his age and his already success.
Yeah.
And that was great. It didn't bother me a bit. We remained friends.
Yeah. And so we're going to get into a little bit of something different too. So something else that Corey does is he does a lot of, motivational speaking as well as mentoring. And so what company is that, and what's the aim of what you're doing there?
Well, our mentorship company is called Faster Horses. It's actually derived from an old country song that I was beat into my head when I was young about how everyone's chasing faster horses, and among other things, if you know the song. But it's really started about 4 or 5 years ago now. I was putting out a lot of content, for different companies as far as educating customers on what processes we were doing. And Masonry Magazine picked that up and, kind of contacted me and said, hey, would you like to write an article for us? It was one. So after a few negotiations, we decided, yeah, we'll do one. Well, then it turned into 3. And then it turned into every other month. And now here, about 3 years ago now, I think, is when we started monthly columns in Masonry Magazine. And I watched how people reacted to that sort of thing. And I knew that there must be knowledge that I was blessed with somehow that other people didn't have to learn the hard way. Because a lot of the lessons I got were the hard way.
I'm sure.
I mean, you take some lumps on the chin every now and then, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of just started putting that content out and seeing how people respond to it. And then I just said, okay, well, let's put this together as a package and say, if you want someone to mentor you, we will do that. We're from the industry, we're about the industry, we're still involved in the industry. We're not just a blowhard motivational person to just kind of pump you up.
Yeah.
We're actually going to give you technical stuff. So it's actually done pretty well, in its own little corner of the world, its own niche.
Yeah, and so you started that 5 years ago. When was the first publication that you did with Masonry Magazine?
To remember the date exactly, I don't know, but it's somewhere in the 4 to 5 year range, after negotiations.
And I thought it was really cool because I just had the opportunity to read your most recent one on culture, right? So what kind of content, what kind of writing did you put inside that article?
Well, I try to write all my articles as if we're talking just like this.
Yeah.
I want to be very open with people the way I write. So it was more about the company culture of the whole article starts off with one premise, which I truly believe 100%. And that is that good employees actually want to work for good companies. We all sit here and argue about we can't find help or, nobody's good, everyone's lazy, blah, 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 blah. They've been saying that stuff about every generation for hundreds of years. All right, I was a lazy bum too when I was growing up. So I'm sure you were. I know you were. You had to be.
I know. Guilty.
But anyway, so that's really the premise of the whole company culture thing. Is that we want to be a good company that creates a good culture. So good employees want to work for us, and they actually seek us out. And so when we do have openings, they're looking for us. We're not actively looking for employees as much as employees are back looking to work for us.
Absolutely.
So that's really what it's about. And really the whole thing boils down to, a lot of structure, a lot of communication, and a lot of self-discipline by owners. As far as adhering to your own rules. I've been around multiple contractors and networked with hundreds of them at this point. And one of the things I find a lot is when they have issues with company culture, it's because the owner feels like he's above the law. And we have to be humble enough as owners to sit down and go, no, you have ideas too. Let's be open. Let's listen to each other, and let's build something together.
Yeah. So a really collaborative kind of working environment is really what sounds like works the best.
It absolutely does. It creates harmony within all your employees. Lack of communication is another thing I harp on a lot with culture. Especially if you're a company where you have PMs and superintendents and foremen and that. It's real. I've been on both sides of that. The people in the office think the people in the field are dumb, and the people in the field think the office is dumb. And it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. We can figure this out if we just check our egos and understand that we are building together. Yeah. But a lot of that comes from pressure above, on down, from owners down, where it's like, well, why aren't those field guys doing what I told them to do? Well, the field guy said, well, we can't do it that way, but the PM's being a asshat. Yeah. I mean, you might as well call it what it is. That's what they say.
Yeah, I understand.
So there's a lot of communication aspects to that culture of really wanting to be in that belonging and knowing that there's a goal there that's not just self-interest.
Yeah, and does understanding what the people, like obviously you mentioned the office admins and then also the field employees, the PMs, there has to probably be some sort of understanding of what each of those groups are doing and how one group doing something is going to impact the other, right? And is that part of the kind of the respect and other things?
Yeah, and it's funny, back to to re-reference what you said earlier about my father and the teachings I got. Being so young in concrete, if you've ever poured concrete, I was taught that if you do your job really well, the next guy's job's better. So if I rake it down really well, the screed guy's he's a lot better off. If the screed guy puts it down better, the guy running the float's doing a lot better. Every step in that process gets better. So when we talk about communication and culture, it's building blocks. It's, okay, if we do our job as best we can, then the next guy's job's easier. So if your foreman does excellent work all the time and he does his job the best of his ability, your superintendent's going to have an easier time. Once your superintendent's job gets easier, then he can do his job better. Then it just trickles on up the line, and it really just affects the bottom line.
Yeah. So it's really important then what you're saying to are you saying that you start at the bottom level and work your way up? Is that the easiest, or is it kind of got to be both ways?
Not necessarily. A lot of the time, you almost have to take inventory of all your processes and figure out which one is the easiest to fix. That's where I start to tell everybody that. I say, let's figure out one small thing that we can change, because I'm not a fan of wholesale changes immediately. That creates a lot of tension and rifts and just bad production. So let's find that one process. It may be in the memos that your PMs are sending to your superintendents. That may be just that little thing. That may be the building block, the catalyst to get that open line of communication. And then you kind of work from there on the things you need to tweak. Because once you get one process under control and down, the rest of them start to expose their flaws. Yeah. They can't get buried in with that.
Okay. And can you tell us, you talked about learning experience and things like that. Do you have an instance that, something went terrible that you learned from that maybe somebody watching this can learn from as well?
Actually, it's something that we just had happen a couple years ago. And I think this is really why our commercial side's taking off right now. We were on a job site and we, had an issue with a third-party inspector where they were upset about an 1/8 of an inch variance in a concrete slab. And it was a little bit pins and needles, but the experience was poise. We handled poise very well within that situation. I mean, he berated me. It was pretty rough to the point where the superintendents on the job were like, "You need to leave because I don't think you're going to make it through this." And not because of they thought I was going to get angry and lash out, which we didn't. But what we did is we created communications that were very clear, very concise, very detailed. And that's how we communicated with him the rest of the job. And what it did was it turned that situation where he was upset with everything we did after that to where he was on our side by the end of the job, and then it just led to more jobs down the road. They're like, "Yep, you can do the next one. Just here's the prints, go do it." Yeah.
So there's a trust aspect there too.
Absolutely.
When you build a relationship like that, you're also building trust and rapport and such. And I'm certain that's huge.
Trust, I consider trust it's kind of a combination of past performance and future expectations. I trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do because you've done it in the past, and I expect that in the future. So that's kind of how we build our relationships with all of our clients, is through that trust, which is a lot of communication, a lot of open conversations just like this, especially when there's an issue on a job site, because there's issues on every job site. Let's call it what it is. But when they happen, we're the ones that bring it first to the table. Like, hey, this is going to be an issue in 2 weeks. So that open line of communication really helps build that trust within all of our clients.
That makes a lot of sense too. And to kind of close on this interview then, so we talked about culture, everything like that, and then some of, you just gave a great example about kind of a learning experience. Do you have anything else, like any upcoming things that people in the industry should be looking for, or maybe, something like that?
Not really as far as upcoming things, but I will say that, their information's out there. If you want to get better at something, if you have a process, or if you have, a sales issue or a production issue, the information is out there. Obviously I'm not creating any new information as much as I am absorbing it, cataloging it, and then overlapping it so it works together. And that's what I'd like to tell people is the information's out there. Go get it. Go educate yourself. Don't sit around and fight a problem for a year and a half when you could pick up the phone and find someone who's already been through it and has the solution done.
Exactly.
Don't be scared to ask questions, because that's how we get answers.
Yes, and Google is a beautiful thing. But I will say, knowing a professional that's been through things is always the best way to go. So Corey, what's the best way, if somebody that's watching this video wants to get in contact with you, what's the easiest way to doing it?
The easiest way, I have a email set up for our Masonry Magazine stuff. The email address is buildingmore outlook.com.
Okay.
So they can just email me directly there. It will come right to my phone, and that's the quickest way to get me.
Awesome. And be sure to check out his LinkedIn as well. He always has some good information on there as well. And thanks a lot. Like I said, this is a great friend of mine now, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Yep,
So.
no problem. Thanks, man.